InPsight Radio. I am your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. How are you? Happy spooky October. As we get the other podcasts posted, I want to get some of the October ones posted too. And so we're kind of jumping ahead a little bit here with this podcast. But I am so excited. I love this time of year, you guys. I love the changing seasons. I love all the weirdo spirits that come out. I mean, if you have animals this time of year, watch your pets. If you have dogs, if you have cats, birds, doesn't matter what, especially if they're mammal pets. Watch your pets, because as your pets come out, they start to notice all these weird things that are going bump in the night, right? They're noticing all of these funny little invisible doohickeys that you're not even seeing. They'll stare off into space. They'll bark at weird times. I mean, I love watching my pets this time of year. It's so much fun. So yes, watch your pets. Welcome to the thinning ethers of October. And of course, one of my most fun things to talk about are ghosts and spirits. And, I don't do a ton of podcasts on the paranormal. I mean, I do. However, I think that ghosts can be so overdone, right? However, at the same time, there's a lot we can learn from ghosts and spirits, because really they're just people. They're just people who don't have a body anymore. God, that reminds me. Do you guys, who was raised in the 1970s? Raise your hand. Do you remember it was an album put out by Marlo Thomas and really Alan Alda called Free to Be You and Me. Do you guys remember that? And they had this whole album on how we're all equal. Like, it was really, really, really about how girls are equal to boys and nobody's better and they're both equal, the Equal Rights Amendment, all the things, 1973. So I've listened to this record. My mom got this record for me, my mom and dad, and I listened to it obsessively. But there was this song on there that was talking about, like, mommies are people with children. And do you remember that? And Rosie Greer was on the record. And I don't know if he sang this song, but it was the daddies are people, ding, 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 people with children, ding, 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 ding. And the little ding, 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 ding parts are, I'm pretty sure they were like a xylophone or a vibraphone, because it was the 1970s. So who doesn't put a vibraphone in your pop music in the 1970s? God, everybody was high back then. But anyway, that reminds me of ghosts. Ghosties are people. Bing, 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 bing. People without bodies. Bing, 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 bing. So ghosts are people. People without bodies. That's what they are. And they're all over the place. And it's not always because they're trapped. And that's something when we watch paranormal television, which you all know I get a little thin-skinned about, even though I've been on a lot of it. And not all of it is bad. Some of it's terrific, but there's a lot of it that's just weird crap out there. And the whole idea of ghosts being stuck, sometimes they are stuck. And the only thing that can stick us as a ghost is if we experience a lot of fear. That will keep us stuck in death, as well as keeping us stuck in life. So, we hear that old adage, whatever is in the light is also in the dark. There's nothing in the dark that's not in the light, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's not actually true. There's a lot that comes out in the dark that can't tolerate the light, because the power of the sun is very, very, very big. And the power of electrical conduits is huge. So a lot of times things will come out in the dark when there's not a lot of competing energies. We're talking ghosts or other things that go bump in the night. But we're going to stick to ghosts for this podcast, because there's a lot of misconceptions about ghosts. And one of them is that if you die and you don't find the light right away, you're going to be stuck. Like missing a freaking train at a Grand Central Station. If you don't get it on right away, you're dead, man. You're just going to wander around your house forever. Well, that's not exactly true. There are a lot of spirits, a lot of ghosts that choose to stay in a home because that's their heaven. That's what they liked. They cross over, They go to the angels, they go to the other side, they get their little docket of opportunities in heaven. And one of the fill in the bubbles is go hang out in your current residence. And if you're going to be a spirit that wanders around your old house or whatever, those are good spirits. And good spirits are around a lot. And it's not that they're earthbound. They choose to go visit the house. They choose to walk through once in a while. They're the ones that'll help you, like put away the dishes, or if you leave the cabinet doors open, they might come and close them, or maybe they let the dog in. There's a lot of really great ghost stories as well. And one of the most profound ghost stories that I could personally tell you, and I don't think this one made my book. I'm writing a new book, actually, on the most terrifying things that I've ever seen. And I did the book True Tales of the Truly Weird, which was just about weird stuff, alien abduction that I've encountered, weird ghosts, demons, elemental things, just weirdo things, right? But people are genuinely curious about spooky stuff. Now, I'm not one of those people that try to pretend in the metaphysical industry, and now it is an industry, which kind of grosses me out too. But guess what? I'm part of it, so let's not be a hypocrite, Danielle. So there you go. The point being is that there's quite a bit about the dark or ghosts that I think if we get educated on, then if we encounter something like that, then it doesn't scare us as much, right? Because if we think we're the only person that has ever felt something terrifying, then we start to think that maybe it's just haunting us, or there's something wrong with us, or the devil has a target on our back, blah, blah, blah. Well, this was the reason I originally wrote True Tales of the Truly Weird, is I know I am not the only person that off-worlders have visited and tried to abduct, and I think succeeded at 1 or 2 points, but I don't believe I'm the only unique individual that's happened to. I don't believe I'm the only person that stood in front of another individual and watched that person literally be taken over by a spirit because that person was an open channel medium and didn't realize it. And they're drinking and acting the fool. And pretty soon they have a hitchhiker who's borrowing the flesh suit for 5 minutes. I don't think I'm the only person that's ever witnessed that, right? I don't think I'm the only person who have ever witnessed an elemental being doing some weird stuff in a home that probably shouldn't have been built on some ley lines. I mean, I also don't think I'm the only person that's ever experienced demonic oppression and weird dark energies. And yes, dark energies are real, and I'm not going to pretend they're not real. I'm not going to put a lot of focus on them. I mean, I'm not a big fat fan of hairy spiders, so I don't do a ton of podcast on hairy spiders, but it doesn't mean that they're not there and don't serve a purpose and they're not real. It just means they give me creepouts. And now I am brushing off my shins because, air spiders in my mind. So there we go. So if we look at the dark, if we look at ghosts, if we look at the fact that we can have good ghosts versus negative ghosts versus mean ghosts, well, we have good people versus mean people. So if we're a jerky person and we are addicted to being jerky and we die in a lot of fear because we're afraid if we die, maybe the fact that we molested our kid or we tortured animals or we were just a general a-hole of gregarious proportion is going to get us a one-way hot ticket to hell, we don't tend to cross over. We are afraid. And the bottom line there is it's not that there's this heavenly retribution that's keeping us here. Our fear keeps us here, you guys. Our fear keeps us here. It keeps us here. Our fear does. So with the knowledge that our fear keeps us here, at that point, we are really just, we're really up against a fascinating, I was listening to this angel, sorry. We're up against this fascinating wall of our fear will limit us in death as well as in life. So let's not adhere to it to the point where it's a religious belief system, okay? Now, what makes a bad ghost? Let's keep this super simple. What makes a bad ghost? Well, people generally were not very nice people in life. They have a lot of fear going into death. They are fighting death. They are bucking death. They are arm locking against death. And so when they come out of their body, they're literally hanging onto their body like crazy. They're like, the person who's getting sucked up in the giant celestial Hoover vacuum to heaven. And they're like, no, and they're hanging onto their body. Imagine a cartoon. Their legs are flapping, trying to get sucked up into heaven. And they're like, no! And then all of a sudden the Hoover vacuum hose moves from that person onto somebody else because somebody else might be passing, right? This is a ridiculous way to describe this, but stay with me. So the person who's hanging onto the lapels of their body then all of a sudden is like, whew, dodge that bullet. And now they're, kind of in this weird in-between space, and we like to call that earthbound. They're not actually earthbound. They're just in an in-between dimension, like being stuck in an elevator going between floors. And they think this elevator is their whole world. And they're like, sweet, I can still see everybody, and maybe I can talk to people. So they're running around trying to get people's attention. But guess what? You're dead, bucko. Nobody can see you except for weirdos like me. So then this person's getting freaked out and frustrated because they're trying to go back to all their pals and say, hey, I'm here, and nobody can see them. And pretty soon the fear of being isolated sets in. Well, pretty soon they're starting to notice other beings that can see them in this in-between space. And this really, God, I need to write a screenplay called The In-Between Space. There it is. But anyway, they're in this in-between space. And people are noticing that their living buddies can't see them, but they're looking over and there might be some weirdo dressed in 1600s outfits because we do keep adhering to our identity before we cross over, you guys. We are big on identity until we go to the other side, and then we do keep our identity. Yet in heaven, if you will, the dimension we call heaven, the afterlife, whatever you want to call it, Valhalla, if you died in battle, whatever it is, boy, that makes you spit a lot to try to really speak like a Nordic person. Valhalla. Wow. Anyway, so if you are afraid to cross over and you're in this in-between space, you're going to be encountering other beings that are also in that in-between space, and they're going to be hanging on to whatever their identity was when they crossed, because that's what we do until we get into the peace of the general all. And we go back into the cosmic structure, and we cross over into that perfection dimension, which is heaven. And then we're just chill, and we can be whatever version of ourselves we want to be. If we were Cleopatra way back then, we can put on our Cleopatra costume over there. We can do whatever. But when you're in the in-between, it's a little creeper. So you're stuck there, you're freaking out, you're like, none of my family can see me, I beat death, I'm still on the earth, but nobody can see me, and I'm really freaked out. And there's this weird, creepy, drawn-faced preacher guy staring at me, who, of course, approaches you and tries to pick a conversation. Well, usually the spirits that you encounter in the in-between aren't the most balanced people, because those spirits have been there for quite a while. Isolated, weird, still continuing to buck death. Now you may ask yourself, well, now wait a minute, Danielle, this doesn't make any sense. Like if there are angels and we all have angels and all of our angels follow us everywhere we go, then why aren't our angels just collecting us and taking us to heaven? Why? Well, you know the cardinal rule. Wait a minute. Strike up the music. We all know the cardinal rule of angels interacting with humanity. Angels are never allowed to do anything to us that our free will doesn't dictate. In fact, we cannot be beaten over the head with a miracle. I know, this is tremendously frustrating for all of us who don't trust ourselves to really just reap in the benefits of the universe. However, you have to remember that angels are messengers. They're not like other beings, like our human spirit guides, who erroneously are thought to wait on us hand and foot like a really desperate indentured servant. That's right, angels are not, in fact, our servants. Shocking. Appalling. But the fact is, these temporal beings are here to help us with what we need help with. If you decide to hide in the in-between for all eternity, facing your greatest fears of rejection or abandonment, never again seeing loved ones in the grand hereafter, your angels will support your choice to linger in the atmosphere. So listen, when it's your time to go, point yourself towards the light. Tell your angels that yes, I'd like to take that one-way trip to the party barge where all of my accommodations are paid for by the physics of the universe. Remember, angels can't save you from your own decided personal hell, but they still have value. Let's give our angels a big round of applause for all the hard work they do, in spite of us. Thank you, creepy lady. Okay, so we all know the cardinal rule now, and if you didn't now, it's burned into your brain with some really saccharine music, so forget about ever forgetting it, all right? So really, if we're wandering out around the in-between and we're making friends with weirdos who also have stuck themselves in the in-between, and I only say weirdos because that's what we would probably see them as, these beings, these human spirits, have been stuck in that in-between for a long time, gang. It's harder and harder to leave that in-between space the longer we're there. Now, it's certainly possible, and our angels try to get us to go with them, but as Creepy Lady told us, they're kind of bound by what we want to do. So they're kind of stuck, like following us around in the in-between, and we see them as various things. Our brain will matrix our angels into something they're not in the in-between, and we'll get really, really frightened of them. We might see them as monsters. We might see them as aliens. I mean, we can see them at that point. And angels are huge. They're 15, 20 feet tall. They're huge beings. And they're not really all that human looking, and they're sometimes covered in eyeballs, and the eyeballs just kind of swim around these weird, like imagine a bunch of spider eyes looking at you at one time. I mean, it's not very settling, right? And they'll try to matrix according to what we think would be, better looking to follow them into the light. They try. Yet they're really bound by what we decide, okay? So we're talking about ghosts, and why are some ghosts friendly and some ghosts aren't friendly? Well, the ones that we're fearful going in, and again, these are huge, giant brushstrokes, and it really is a case-for-case basis, yet this is the greatest amount of commonality that I've seen between differing argumentative or nasty spirits. So that's just kind of a heads up about that. So we're looking at these ghosts, and we don't talk a lot of times in the metaphysical community about darker things, for good reason, because human beings have a bit of an obsession with things that are dark. It's a curiosity about the things that are dark. We oftentimes love stuff that scares us. I mean, just last night, my wife and my daughter and myself, we rewatched The Conjuring. And I love really great ghost stories. And I love anything that has to do with the Warrens. And I know there's a lot of differing opinion out there about the Warrens. However, I got a chance to interview Lorraine Warren years and years ago when I worked for LA Talk Radio. And Lorraine came on a show that I was doing at that time. And she was the most extraordinary lady. And she was in her 80s. And it was just such a delight to actually speak with her, And I got a lot of energy off of our phone call. And that gal was as true blue as they come as far as dedicating her life to God and dedicating her life to bringing answers to paranormal mysteries that were truly terrifying people. And one of the things I really liked in The Conjuring was it touched on a few crossed over issues. And, it's based on a true story, but I'm sure Hollywood punched it up a bit because it's a movie. However, what wasn't super punched up and what I didn't feel was super punched up was the way that we as human beings can create portals for dark things if we really want to. I mean, if you think about it, we're sort of the saloon doors that bridge a spiritual realm to the physical. That's why our soul can ride around in our flesh suit. And that's why people, when they do things like Ouija boards and don't do these things, I'm just going to tell you flat out, don't do them. I mean, you can do them if you want, but you're going to get something that comes through into your house that's like, it's worse than getting like dog poop and shag carpeting. You just can't get it all out, and it never stops smelling like sad dog poo. It's like getting gum in the tight treads of your tennis shoes. I mean, you can scrub and scrub and scrub, but it takes forever to get that gum out. And then if you do track it onto your shag carpeting, you're screwed, okay? So if you want to do that, spiritually, you go ahead and rock those Ouija boards, but that's what it's going to be like, because we become this portal for beings from the other side. We are the vessel, the host, the saloon doors, basically, that enable that being. They use our corporeal energy to kind of catapult from one dimension to the other. We as human beings are dimensional travelers all the time, and we don't even get it. The fact that we're not a dead slab of meat on the sidewalk, and the fact that we're upright and we're walking around, states that we have an electromagnetic signature, an electrical signature in us that allows us to operate this machine that we're in, okay? So our soul, our spirit, you guys, it's hanging out literally half in this incarnation, half in this dimension, and half in another one, because it's fully here, yet it's also always attached to the hereafter, all right? So we are temporal dimensional travelers all the time. We just don't see that. You know, we open up our bills and we're like, I can't pay the phone bill, or, oh, I've got a car issue. All we see is the corporeal. Yet because by the nature of the fact that we contain all this energy, and energy cannot be destroyed, it must be transferred. It comes in from somewhere else. We transfer our actions to this third dimension. That's how spirits use us as a portal. And good spirits, good mojo, good juju, God energy, angels, they use our being as a fulcrum for good juju as well. I mean, have you ever gone and done something really extraordinarily kind for someone, and it changes the whole ether of your life for a while? I mean, maybe it's only 24 hours, maybe it's a whole week, maybe it's a whole year. But the fact that you drew from the other side all of this kind energy, this power, and then swung your saloon doors open in this third dimension by using your hands to go and create something for everybody else here, that's the extraordinary portion. Now we can do that with dark things as well. Okay. Have you ever gone to a really creepy political rally and just feel creeped out by the vibes? Have you ever gone to a creepy concert and maybe there's some really intensely violent lyrics that are part of these songs, and everybody that's there is there to feed on that violence and that rhetoric? It feels gross, right? I mean, for most of us, some of us, I suppose, out there really get into that, whatever your kink is. However, for me, that would be a very uncomfortable place because I gravitate more towards the feel goods. And yes, I recognize that there's a lot of folks out in the world who are in pain. I recognize that a lot of times to have that pain seen, you gravitate towards some pretty disruptive environments. We saw a lot of that in the 2017 election, 2016 to 2017. We saw millions of human beings, socioeconomically disadvantaged human beings in the United States who have been ignored and not listened to and marginalized, come flocking out of the corners of feeling invisible and glomming on to then Republican nominee Donald Trump because he felt that he gave them a voice. Their pain drew them out in like cause. And former President Trump is a tremendous intuitive, actually. A mega intuitive. That's how he's dodged some of the bullets that guy has dodged. And I don't mean that literally, I mean it metaphorically. However, like the legal issues, all of these other things, former President Trump has been able to dodge all that because the guy is a phenomenal intuitive. Love him or hate him, he's got tremendous spiritual gifts. Now, I would say that when I look at his behavior, it doesn't seem that he's chosen to use those gifts to be swinging saloon doors for things that could better the environment or better the world. It seems like he uses those swinging saloon doors to bring through whatever people need at that moment. And the folks who clamor to him are people who are traditionally in a lot of fear and a lot of pain. So for him to be able to create a feeling of connection with people, he swings those saloon doors open and he pulls through that pain and that fear and that rhetoric, and he feeds it to the people who are wanting to be seen. And in doing so, he feels connected. And, you know, they talk about a lot of really interesting psychological conditions. And I am not a psychotherapist, so I'm not a diagnostician, yet I have a lot of friends who are, who during the Trump presidency talked about former President Trump and were stunned because according to them, they are the professionals. I am not. This is just a retell of a story. According to them, he suffered from severe narcissistic personality disorder. And some of my friends thought he had these subsets that were sociopathic. Some of them thought that he was covering up for bipolar subsets somehow with his rumored Adderall use and all these things. Rumored. Do you like my finger quotes? God, that poor guy. I'll never forget the first debate with Joe Biden. And I'm like, buddy, somebody needs to give you a cheeseburger and like 6 glasses of milk so you can come down off that Adderall a little bit. You are struggling. Wow. And then as Adderall does, after about 40 minutes, he just crashed and was very quiet. And again, that's just a psychic hit, gang. Just a psychic hit. So anyway, looking out into all of that, what makes a person a scary ghost? Well, considering that we have these examples of, I'll just kind of pick on former President Trump using his incredible intuition and his conduitness to bring through something that those in great anger and pain would relate with, bringing through that energy, okay? As opposed to somebody like, say, the Dalai Lama, who throws open his personal saloon doors and sucks all that energy in for love and compassion and throws that out to everybody, whether they want it or not. Now, really, in the scope of spiritual physics, gang, and this is very hard for we binary thinking mortals to get our brain around, yet in the scope of spiritual physics, whether you are a conduit for negativity from the other side or you are a conduit for positivity from the other side, neither one of those is really viewed under a moral microscope by the hereafter. And sometimes people actually sign up, like former President Donald Trump, to come down here and be a conduit for fear and for aggravation, because in dealing with the fear and aggravation, we have got to make choices in how we're going to evolve. So again, I always say this, and it makes a lot of people mad, but it's true. We're all going to be on the party barge on the other side. We're all going to be hanging out, and there's going to be former President Donald Trump over there, and he's going to be getting handshakes left and right from the heavens going, man, you deserve an Oscar for that performance. That was just as good as Sir Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs, man. That was awesome. And I can just hear former President Trump, in heaven. And of course, he looks like one of his Rambo flags. Have you ever seen those the Trump flags where they have photoshopped his face on the Rambo body, right? I have no doubt that's going to be the body that former president chooses in heaven. Either that or Jessica Rabbit. I haven't decided. But he's going to be up there and I can just hear him going, yeah, it was huge. It was a huge job. But anyway, the universe sees things very differently than we do. So when we talk about why do people choose to run around and stay in the in-between, not to be confused with the upside down, if you're a Stranger Things viewer, to be watching, why would we do that? Well, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear there. So when I'm going into haunted houses and I encounter human spirits that have chosen to linger in the in-between for quite a long time, gang, it twists you up. You can't just wander around with people not seeing you and only commiserating with other fear-soaked beings that are terrified of their potential trip to hell, so they're staying in this place. And pretty soon, a lot of those beings begin to forget that they had another alternative. A lot of those beings who consciously stay in the in-between, which are different than a being who dies, goes to heaven, and gets to fill in the bubble on the what do you want to do in your heaven time activities card that says, oh, go to your house once in a while, check on the people who live there, pet the dog, play in the garden. It's different when you just don't ever cross over. So when I'm dealing with those beings oftentimes in homes, they are gnarly. Ooh, oh God, it just chokes me up. They're gnarly. They really are. So when I hear people in my metaphysical field saying things like, oh, just ignore ghosts and whatever, well, we should ignore bad ghosts. Because oftentimes negative spirits, if they're not getting fed, because they do feed off of our response to them, just like former President Trump, who threw open those doors and was an agitator and fed off of the fear and the anger and the desperation of all the people that felt like they'd not been heard before. Okay? Just like that, these negative ghosts will feed off of all of this stuff we give them to feed off of. So if we are, for some reason, afraid of them constantly or baiting them or doing Ouija boards, they're going to stick around because we're giving them energy. We're giving them acknowledgement. And you got to remember, the beings in the hereafter are really craving some sort of acknowledgement because you're still human, even though you're not in a body. And you really haven't gone through the check-through period to leave all of your human pain and anguish here because you just won't make that ethereal barrier cross. It's really super sad. So I have gotten an opportunity to cross many spirits over, yet I got to sit down with them and we got to have a talk about the wretched stuff they did in this lifetime that they're afraid of. And that makes them mad. And going back to The Conjuring, which of course is based on a true story about the Warrens, yet it's been punched up a little for Hollywood. What's interesting there is, if you've not seen The Conjuring, spoiler alert right now. The demon or the thing, the being that's causing trouble, the Warrens refer to it as a demonic entity. Yet the being itself was once a human that committed its life to Satan. So, that sends a little bit of a confusing message out to everyday land. Like, well, wait a minute. If I'm somebody who does dark things in life, do I die and become a demon? Well, no, we can't become a demon. We can't become an angel. Those are very different beings. But we can become a really, really demented, dark human spirit that feeds off of a lot of negativity that can grow your strength in the in-between. And a lot of demonic beings will kind of partner up with humans because demonic beings have a really hard time with being in our incarnation. They just do. It's very tough for them. And they don't like it that this information gets out there. It's hard for a demonic being to wander around Earth. Earth is the planet itself, the very nature of the rock that we sit on and live on. That rock has a consciousness, and it is nothing but love. And it is so linked up with God and with love. That entire consciousness just wants to radiate love. And so demonic life has a really hard time here on the planet. What it's got to do is it's got to partner up either with the person who's suffering greatly, and that person then becomes the saloon doors to bring some of that energy through. We become the portal in essence. Or it's got to partner up with a disembodied human, a ghost, who is thriving on fear. And it's got to be able to use that ghost as a battery pack because it's still a human spirit. So it still has access to come through these ethers. Okay? And a lot of times, demonic beings will appear to people who are kind of self-stuck in the in-between as someone who's their ally, their friend, something that's helping them out, somebody who's going to help them get vengeance on all the people who didn't treat them properly. I mean, you got to remember, gang, demonic life are the junkie cousins of the angels. They are temporal beings. Just like angelic life, they can go everywhere. They can do almost anything. They are limited when they come up against the wall of love and of light. They are limited. Now, angelic life, you're not going to find it in what we call hell either, because angelic life, even though the darker vibration is rough on the angelic life, the very nature of what an angel is, it's high vibration, just blasts apart all of that slow vibration that is a demon. So the angels technically are stronger because of what they're made out of. Now, demonic life know this, so they tend to try to it's not like, the Bible makes it sound like demonic life is running around trying to poke at God out of a vendetta. That's kind of a human response. Really, demonic life gets a lot of energy like a nuclear reactor out of beings of light, and they eat that energy. But they can't eat the pure love and light. They've got to eat it through it being translated into fear, suffering, something else. But even that fear and suffering has very high nutritional value to a demonic being that can't really be in this plane of existence because of the dimensional, really resonance issues that could destroy it. Are you following? So when you watch The Conjuring, it gets super confusing because there's this ghost that they're referring to as a demon, and they're trying to do an exorcism of this demon out of this woman. And really, you could exorcise a demon out of somebody who is possessed by a ghost if there was a demon attached to that ghost. But sometimes people are just really affected by the spirit itself. So it got a little confusing there if you follow metaphysics or you work in the paranormal field. But I mean, it's a Hollywood movie, so come on, whatever. It was easy as I think for people to go, oh, yeah, right. It's a lady who's committed her life to Satan and now she's a demon and now she's haunting her land. Okay. I think that's an easier leap for people than the last 10 minutes of explanation I just put out. But I want you to understand it, okay? So the thing of it is we cannot have an attachment as a human being that we're not co-creating. And this is something that makes a lot of my metaphysical practitioners uneasy when I talk about, because a lot of folks in this field make a lot of money taking attachments off of people. Well, first of all, if you come to me, and if you're someone who have ever come to me over the last 18 years, coming up on 19 soon, if you've ever come to me and said, remove an attachment from me, you're going to hear me say the same thing. You don't have an attachment. You are choosing to co-create a relationship with this energy for some reason, and you might not even be aware of the reason, and you might not be aware you're doing it. So let's talk about what you're miserable about. So yeah, I just want you guys to not get freaked out and think, oh my God, I was having a really bad day, so now I've incanted some weird demon into my house. I've become the portal for negativity. You guys, gray area, okay? An apple is a fruit. Not all fruits are an apple, okay? Gray area here. We're talking people who really work hard to be the portal for something dark. And they have to work hard to be that portal for something dark. So if you're a lost spirit in the in-between and you're demented anyway, and you've not been around people for 200 years, and then some dark thing saddles up to you that you think is a light thing, and your judgment's way off now because you've been in this Jacob's Ladder hell for a while, you want to know what the in-between is like? See the movie Jacob's Ladder. It's an older film, but it is a fantastic description of the in-between, which is sort of this waking nightmare, sort of purgatory hell place. But see Jacob's Ladder. It's a great, somebody knew exactly what the in-between is like. Somebody had gone to the in-between and knew what it was like, or got hung up there for a while. Because I remember watching that movie and I was so freaking freaked out. I'm like, oh my God, the in-between is making its way to our incarnation. I hate it. Anyway, so yes, there are dark ghosts. Yes, there are bad ghosts. Yes, there are evil ghosts. And hopefully I've explained why. So when you do encounter these spirits, they do tend to have quite a bit of punch behind them because they've been wandering around using to learn their creepy superpowers in the in-between for a long time. You know, hundreds of years usually. The creepiest ghosts that I run across that are the most gnarly are ones that have saddled up with some dark inhuman beings that they think are humans that are pumping their inhuman power through the ghost, and the ghost thinks it's their power, and the ghost is wielding all of this stuff like slamming doors, stacking chairs, throwing dishes. All of that behavior is the behavior of chaotic darkness, not human spirits. But there are human spirits that become the portal for it. So then you got two pests you got to get out of the house. And if you can convince the human spirit that A, they're being used by the dark thing, and you give the human spirit, if it'll listen to you, something to turn around and say to their bestie over there that they think is their brother or their grandpa or their uncle or whoever it is, their wife. You know, like if they try to say to these beings, I always get these dark beings who are piggybacked by super scary demonic stuff that pumps up the battery pack of the creepy ghost in the house. I always try to give that ghost a test for these beings because I can see they're dark. I can see they're dark spirits. They're demonic. And I can see it's a human spirit. And I'll tell that human spirit that's not your grandpa. And boy, that human spirit gets so defensive. And of course, demons are super smart, you guys. The idea that demonic life is stupid is really ridiculous. That's like saying an angel is stupid. Keep in mind, these are basically the same genus of beings. They just occupy different dimensions and they have different jobs. Okay? So the demonic life is, it's really smart. And the demon might tell the guy, say I'm talking to an old preacher. This is a true story, actually. I was encountering an old deceased preacher who had done some terrible things to some native children. And this was out in Washington State. And this guy was a missionary of sorts. And he didn't want to go to heaven because he knew he'd go to hell in his mind. Okay? Well, he had been molested, this man, as a child. So he was broken as a child and he was enacting broken abusive behaviors. And by the way, we do not get thrown out of heaven when we're broken as a child for enacting broken behaviors. We don't get thrown out because we're broken. We just don't get thrown out, period. We have to choose not to go to heaven, but that's another thing. So I'm dealing with this preacher guy and he's got 3 of the most gnarly demonic weirdos hanging out with him. And one of them is his wife, supposedly, and his other 2 are his sons, supposedly, okay? And the wife is speaking around the bend about how I'm the demon who's here to tempt him away from God's work in his family. Because what he's doing, this guy is terrorizing a family that lives in a house in Washington State. And the wife and the 2 sons have him convinced that he's doing God's work to terrorize this family who doesn't go to church and whatever, blah. So I look at the guy and I said, if that's your wife, then you should be able to tell her that you love her. And she should be able to say, I love you too. And he's like, it is my wife. And she's like, don't listen to the demon. And it's this whole scene out of a movie practically where they're calling me the demon and the devil's spawn and they're tossing stuff at me and blah. So I say to the guy, well, if I'm the demon, then why would I tell you that I have love for you? I love you, and I don't want to see you suffer because you're suffering. And there's something not right about this pretend wife and these 2 boys, and you know it. There is something not right. There's something off here, but you're desperate because you're afraid, and my heart is breaking for you because as a fellow person, I love you, and I see what you did to those native kids, and yes, it's absolutely appalling. Yet you've been in hell for 200 years, so you got to let it go. You got to go on. And of course, then the demons get really mad. So they're appearing to me differently than they're appearing to him. And they're hissing and spitting and screaming at me. And to them, they're like holding on to him and crying and saying, oh, don't listen. It's tempting you. Don't buy into it. And finally, I got this guy. I said, if I'm the demon, then how can I say I love you? Ask your wife to tell you that she loves you. And this guy turns around to his wife, and her name was Martha. Oh, it wasn't his wife. It was a creepy-ass demon wearing a really bad turn-of-the-century chick outfit, but whatever. So turns to this demon and says, Martha, I love you. Do you love me? And this oh my God, it was so pissed, this demon, threw this big fit, how could you even ask me that? Of course, I feel the same way you do, blah, blah, blah. I says, well, then tell me you love me. And it can't. It can't say I love you. It can't even say I love you. It can try, but it doesn't come out right. It makes the demon sick. It's like, it makes the demon feel as nasty as if a loving person looks at somebody they love and says, I hate you. I don't even use the word hate joking around. I was joking around the other day about football coaches. And I was joking about a football coach. And I said, oh, man, I hate him for that play. And I just joking, it made me feel gross. And I immediately had to take that back and say, you guys, I don't hate him. That's ridiculous. I love the guy. I'm just mad he made that call. But as yucky as it feels for a loving person to say hate, it's 17 trillion times worse for a demon to say, I love you, right? So here's this guy. He's looking at the fake Martha in the bad outfit. I mean, really bad. Like we're talking small town community theater, made a dress out of a bed sheet. Like, what are you even doing, demon? Wow, man. Get on your costuming. But anyway, I digress. So the guy says, Martha, do you love me? And of course, and how could you even ask me that? And I can't even believe you'd ask me that. And she storms off. And then the boys are like, why'd you upset mom? And I'm like, ask your boys to tell you they love them. And of course, this preacher guy's yelling at me saying, you're breaking up my family. And how could you do this to me? And you're the demon. Get out, demon, in the name of Jesus Christ. And I said right back to him, in the name of Jesus Christ, be gone, devils. And his two sons, and I'm no exorcist, okay? And it's not like I can go and exorcise a demon out of somebody, although I've been party to them and sort of ended up on the other end of doing some exorcism-like stuff because I kind of had to at a couple of points in my life, but I don't want to misrepresent myself as being an exorcist, okay? That's a whole different thing. So I said, in the name of Jesus Christ, be gone, you demons, from this man. And there was this wash of awkward. And if you could, the way I describe it to you is imagine two holograms starting to fritz out just a little bit. And this guy turned around and he knew something was off with these three anyway, but he starts saying to his sons, boys, claim the name of Jesus as your Lord and Savior. And they're smart. Demons are smart. So they come back and saying, Father, we've been with you, helping you clean the darkness out of these homes. How could you question our faith? Blah. He's like, claim the name of the Lord Jesus. So they're going back and forth. And pretty soon, man, it was like watching a tick that just could not get its head out of somebody's arm and stop the flow of blood. These things just exploded. They just blew the frick up. I mean, they're sitting there and he's like, claim the name of the Lord Jesus. And they're just like, Father, how could you think that we're this and that? And they tried every heart puller in the book. And this one kid, I guess in life, had some kind of asthma. So this jackhole demon drops to its knees and it's like, Father, oh, this is upsetting me. The darkness, trying to pull on dad's heartstrings because he started an asthma attack in his kid. And I'm just looking at these guys like, you guys are idiots. You really, just let it go. So basically, they just exploded. Like they exploded. And there were these two giant black swimming clouds behind this guy. And they just roared at him. Like if you could imagine, in the movies, like when King Kong comes up and roars at somebody and the roar is so big, like it blows your hat off and blows the chairs over. It was that kind of roar. And man, that guy just hit the deck. He had his hands up, the creepy preacher guy, right? His hat goes flying off. There's this giant freezing cold breeze in the actual room because regrettably, I'm the only one seeing this out of everybody who was there. So boom, this big, huge cold breeze comes through the room and it's moving lampshades and people are like, what's going on? And I'm like, hold still. These things disappear because their bluff was called. They can't say Jesus Christ. They can't say I love you. Well, they disappear and kind of way far away in this scope of the ethers, you see this Martha costume thing over there sobbing and crying and trying to guilt the preacher from afar. Because keep in mind now the gig is up. So this demonic being isn't really sure it wants to double down at this point because the ethers are already changing around this man. Because he's realizing, holy crap, his illusion is falling apart. And these demonic beings can only really manipulate a lot of the human spirits as long as the human spirit is adhering to the illusion. Which is exactly like life, you guys, right? If we are adhering to an illusion day in and day out, then how is it that we can actually see the light around us? When we are in illusion, that's when fear takes hold. When we believe something's happening that's not happening, that's when we create our own personal hell. So the dynamics alive are no different than the dynamics dead if we don't cross over. So always cross over. So, okay? So anyway, so this lady thing, pretend person, is standing off in the distance and is calling out to this guy. He's on his knees. He's He's crying. He's got his hands over the top of his head. He's realizing he's really been duped and things are not good. So here's old fake Martha. And fake Martha's out there and she's yelling at him saying, how could you do this to our boys? You've let the demon kill our children. Summon your, and she can't say summon your belief in God. She's saying summon your strength and cast the demon away and blah, blah, blah. And he turns around and he says, because now he's figured it out. Okay. He's figured it out, this thing. And he's just sobbing. It was awful. And now I'm crying. I'm watching creepy, drawn, terrifying spirit guy who looks like a really bad extra off of Walking Dead. And he's sobbing. And he's looking at fake dead Martha over there. And he's saying to her, Martha, why can't, it even chokes me up even telling this story. What a sap. I'm such a sap. And he's like, Martha, why can't you just say, I love you? And she's just like, my darling, you know how I feel. Say, I love you. Why can't you say, I love you? And she comes up with some other bogus-ass answer that's not going to cut it. And this guy just drops his head and he sits up in a completely different way. And he just throws everything he's got at this being. And he goes into his Puritan-based, weird, evil Satan, thy name is blah, and thy and the these and the thous. And he is casting this demon right out. And at first the demon's like really itchy and weird and is like, oh, stop, this is ridiculous. What are you doing? And pretty soon just cannot stand, he brings in the name of Jesus Christ, our Savior. May the holy angel Michael slay you, demon, blah, blah. He's going through his whole thing he goes through. And pretty much old fake dead Martha over there pops just like the other two. And this giant, it's the biggest one out of them all. And it just goes rushing at him in the most... In the form of, and this is what demons do, goes rushing at this guy in the form of the dozens of native children that he raped and killed and disfigured. They had smashed into one creep show looking entity with multiple faces and multiple screaming, gaping mouths that were huge and just awkward limbs and hands reaching out. And this thing is just coming for this guy. And I'm looking at this thing. And demons will turn into whatever we think scares us the most. So if you're dealing with the demon and you lose control over your fear, you're so screwed. You are so screwed. Because they're just going to pull your fear file and become whatever the hell it is you're the most terrified of. Literally. So you have to dump as best as you can every bit of fear when you're dealing with these beings. Well, she's trying to scare this guy back into submission because she's been using him like a battery pack for 200 years. So here comes this sweeping, grotesque figure of these disfigured children, missing limbs, and oh my God, and all the shrieks of all the kids. And it was nightmarish, you guys. Parts of my job kind of suck, okay? So I'm looking at this and I'm just like, oh God. And I'm like, don't let it scare you. Don't let it scare you. It's his fear. It's his fear. It's his fear. I'm doing the whole talk myself through it thing. As this thing is rushing up to this guy, he drops down and now he's covering himself because now he's afraid. Like the biggest thing is there. And I say to him, I'm like, it's just the devil. Just tell it to go away. It's the devil. And this poor broken man who is now dealing with 200 years of running away from every single thing he's done, and now he's just really faced it, is on his knees sobbing. And the lesser of two fears, I guess, got him. And he has his eyes closed and he kind of put his palm up towards this bony, weird, creepy fingers. Not kidding. Walking Dead extra, okay? And he says, devil be gone in the name of the Holy Christ. And he's just screaming at it. Be gone. And this disfigured, morphed up ball of misery just hits the guy and just poofs into this black swimming cloud that looks at my direction and just does that roaring thing again. And now we've got stuff coming off the walls. We've got people running out of the room at this point. We got a bed, the bed's shaking. It's a canopy bed. But nobody can see what I'm seeing. It's just this freezing cold blast of wind. And then it was gone. And so I'm saying to this poor man, after all of this, who's been dealing with these battery packs of crap, and he's just crying and crying and crying and crying. And all of a sudden, I see these great big tall columns of light coming up behind him. And I told him, hey, guess what? You got rid of your demon. It's okay for you to go see God now. It's okay. Go see God now. And, you fought the devil. Go see God now. And he just looked up at me and he's just crying. He says, I can't. I'll be condemned with that creature for all eternity. And I said, you have already condemned yourself for over 200 years to that creature. Go see God now. God will help you heal. And it just makes me cry. And this guy is just sobbing, and these angels come up and he's kind of scared, but then he allows himself to feel their vibration, which is nothing but peace. And his whole countenance drops and his color starts coming back. And he kind of just turns around and he's walking off with them. And he just turns around. He didn't say thank you or anything. That's too Hollywood. But he just kind of turned around and looked at me like, what are you? Like, why did you even bother with me? And all I did was just send him love. And off he went. Now, not all the stories of getting rid of nasty beings end happily. Sometimes they crawl back under the house and turn more into a golem and cause more problems. But most of the time, if you can appeal to the spirit and get them to see that what's kept them stuck is their fear and who they think is their person is not their person, they'll go. Because, humans, man, we are predictable. I'll tell you, we are predictable beings. We are beings that we don't want to hurt. We don't want to suffer. That's why these beings that's why these human spirits stay in the in-between in the first place. They don't want to suffer. So, in my job, you guys, I see a lot of dark things. I don't engage them. They don't engage me. The only time we really have a run-in is if something is causing a problem for people, families. I don't even do that many house calls anymore because people are so more educated on how to get rid of their own creepy garbage that's in their home. And I'm not claiming any supernatural command over the demonic world. I'm just a being of light down here just like everybody else. If I can do it, you can do it. Okay? I just happen to be able to see these beings in a pretty pointed way. And if you really pay attention to tracking down something that feels creepy in your house, watch your mind's eye. We like to call it our imagination, yet we will get a sudden picture of a being that will knock us out. Like it is so profound, the being. It is so profound that, we'd really have to go through our subconscious to figure out how we concocted a being to look like that. And I will tell you straight up, there's no way my subconscious is going to create the crappy, badly made turn-of-the-century dress that fake dead Martha was wearing. No, that's just not it. My imagination, in my imagination, they're going to be immaculately costumed. Come on, man. So when we're dealing with beings that are dark and scary, and if any of this has kind of scared you a little bit, because it's my creepy October podcast that I love, just remember, just shake it off. Go out, sit in the sun, listen to some music, change your energy sphere. That shuts off that portal that could potentially go to something dark or scary. And I'm a glutton for punishment, gang. Our ethers are so thin during this time of year, and I say it every single year. That there is a physical reason that the barrier between the here and the hereafter and the barrier between us and things that go bump in the night get thin. Those barriers get thin because of the electromagnetic pull on the Earth, on our planet, the way that it's tipped in our solar system during this time of the year in the Northern Hemisphere. And it's just the opposite for our Southern Hemisphere. Just the opposite. The things that go bump in the night for them are not in October. That's a different time frame for them. In the North, that's when the ethers are thin. And coming up to October 31st, really about a week before and a week after is our most thin ether time. So watch your pets, have some fun with this. Remember that thin ethers don't bring through just bad things. They also bring through amazing things. And our Druidic cultures, our ancient indigenous worshiping cultures that worshiped the energies of the earth because they didn't think that God was separate from the earth. They thought God was the earth. So when you had these Christian organizations coming in saying, you're pagans, you're worshiping a tree. They're like, what are you talking about? This is an extension of God. And what do you mean I need to bow down to your dead guy hanging on crossbars that you just stuck in my face? What is that? And it's really strange. I mean, I come from a Christian background, you guys, and I'm not trying to offend anybody's faith. It's strange if you look at a crucifix with the crucified Jesus, like a Catholic crucifix, for instance. It's strange if you see that through the eyes of someone who doesn't know the background of it or what it's supposed to mean. And I was wearing a rosary. I tell this story a lot, but I've got to throw it in. I was wearing a rosary one time. I went through a rosary phase in my fashion. And it was a 1950s hardcore Catholic rosary. So it was wood and then had a metal Jesus on it. And it was poor Jesus. He was really emaciated, mangled up, all twisted. His head was thrown up to the heavens. His eyes were rolled back in his head. He had this heinous look on his face. And you could clearly see that it was a person suffering with nails in their hands and their feet. And my kid, I was a new bonus parent, and my kid was, how old was she? Maybe 9? So her eye line, when you hug little kids and their face is kind of in your tummy, kind of in your solar plexus. And it was a long rosary, right? So my kid was staring right at this thing with poor Jesus, the poor mangled Christ, all pinned up on this cross. Now, I really didn't think much about it because I've got a Catholic Italian family. I was raised around it. I know what it symbolizes, whatever. So my kid hugs me and the cross kind of pokes her in the eyeball. So she comes back and she looks at it and she gets this horrified, just poor baby, horrified, compassionate, what the hell expression on her face. And she says, what happened to that guy? And it was at that moment that I realized I had been desensitized to heinous violence since I was a teeny kid going to church. It was just normal to see the bloody, mangled, twisted up Jesus nailed to a cross. And I thought, my God, how desensitized am I? Wow. So I explained what it was and explained what happened. And she looked at me and she said, and she's like in tears. And she says, why would you wear that? And I thought to myself, that's a really good question. And I said, well, honey, I wear it kind of as a fashion statement. And she goes, why? Look at that guy. And, I took it off. I was kind of weirded out. And I went and found a rosary that didn't have a dead Jesus on it. God bless you, Jesus, you poor guy. Sorry you had to deal with all the really angry monkeys down here. Wow, what a buzzkill. So anyway, gang, October. Boy, that's a really great way to wrap up an October podcast, talking about the poor mangled Jesus on my rosary. Yeesh. Everybody, just be aware that we do have dark ghosts out there. We do have creepy ghosts out there. If they are a pestilent in your house, you got to get them out of there somehow. Try to appeal to them. Try to see if there's anything dark. If they're doing things like slamming cupboard doors and throwing dishes, they have a lot of help from another dark entity that's rolling around in there. And sometimes the dark beings, sometimes it's not the human ghost that's doing it. Sometimes they kind of captured a human spirit in a way and just sort of drag them around and use them as the impetus to get through to this other dimension. So, just keep in mind that they can be thrown out of your house. You got to flood a bunch of light into it. You got to really flood the ethers, open up the curtains, let the sunshine in, play good, happy music, light lots of candles, laugh a lot, really laughter, love in the house gets out all that creepy stuff. If there is a problematic human spirit in the house, seek its other compadres and kick them out. And oftentimes the being will either cross over or they will leave. So I hope this has been good and spooky for our October fests that we like to have. And remember, what exists in the dark often will not make its presence known in the light. So as you lay your head upon your pillow, ignoring the dark spot behind your door, realize that you may have a guest who's just waiting for you to close your eyes. And I will see you next podcast.